Angelo to a criminal justice system that is criminal and downright unjust. No wonder Tupac put it like this: they used to have a war on poverty. Now they have a war on drugs, so the police can't bother me. We need to wake up to a criminal justice system that sadly has become what Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow. And now our nation leads the world in prison population, even though we don't have a crime rate that reflects that. But the sad reality is a war on drugs became a war on the poor, and that war on drugs has resulted in our nation's prison systems being filled with individuals who are afflicted by an addiction. Why is it that our nation's prison systems are filled? It's because prison has become big business, and as a consequence, the capitalization of prison needed a commodity, and the commodity has become black and brown bodies. We need to wake up to the peril of 3 strikes and you're out. We need to wake up to what has gone down in this nation with a criminal justice system that is criminal and downright unjust. And so we gather here because we can't sleep on Selma. We cannot sleep through the revolution that is going on. We cannot sleep, my brothers and sisters, on the sad reality that black bodies are still criminalized and vilified in this nation. How can we watch in horror and heartbreak as Eric Garner on video says, "I can't breathe," and yet the police officer that put that illegal chokehold on him is not even indicted? It's because black bodies are still vilified and criminalized. How can Mike Brown lie in a street for 4.5 hours after being shot by a police officer, Darren Wilson, who was judge, jury, and executioner, because he was not seen as human? And when we look at it, my brothers and sisters, somebody needs to wake up. How do I know? Because did you not find it mind-blowing and interesting in how the media portrayed what happened in the aftermath of Ohio State winning the national title? In Columbus, Ohio, students had lit some 89 fires. One building was burnt to the ground. They brought in riot police that night. But guess what the media said that day? They referred to the students as celebrants. They referred to the students as excited. No one said anything about them burning down their own community. No one called them scumbags like Charles Barkley called the protesters there in Ferguson, Missouri. No one called them, my brothers and sisters, thugs. Why? Because there is a difference in how the media portrays black bodies and others. I'm simply trying to let you know somebody needs to wake up to what's going on in Selma and recognize that Selma is everywhere, and now it is our turn. Y'all not feeling me like I need you to. I'm simply trying to say we need to be reminded of the wisdom. Who is the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five? When they say it's like a jumper, sometimes it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jumper, sometimes it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. And then Grandmaster said, "Don't push me, cause I'm close to the..." Y'all know the song, don't you? I guess I'm trying to say we need to wake up and not sleep on Selma. Its legacy, its lessons, its mission, and what it has to say to us. And with that being the case, I wanted to learn some lessons from that and suggest it's our turn, it's your turn, it's my turn to step up and make America live up to its promise. It's our turn to receive the baton from the drum major for justice, to ensure that his dream becomes a reality to those who still experience the nightmare of second-class citizenship and poverty. It's our turn to step up and make this world a better place. How can we do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Please forgive me, but you recognize I am a preacher, so I'm not going to preach, but there's a text I've got to at least lift up in these remaining moments when you get home, look in the gospel according to Matthew, and there in the 4th chapter, heaven's hero who has come from the hood, Jesus of Nazareth, has just come up out of the wilderness where he was in warfare with wickedness. He was dueling with the devil, and the Bible says he came through that victoriously. The angels ministered to him, and then the Bible says, here it is, John the Baptist, he gets word on the gospel grapevine, has been treacherously betrayed and sent into prison. He's sent to prison. Why? Because even in biblical antiquity, oppressors always used injustice in the justice system as a tool of oppression. And so John the Baptist is thrown in prison, and here is Jesus. He hears about John being thrown in jail, and look what happens. That's when the Bible says he ignited his movement. He started his movement. He began his gospel ministry. Y'all didn't shout. Let me back up and give it to you one more time. John the Baptist is thrown in jail. It ain't just, it ain't right, but that's when Jesus, the Bible says, departs into Galilee. And when he departs into Galilee, that's when he began his messianic mission, his liberation, and his liberating and loving ministry. He began that when he heard that John had been thrown in prison. Y'all still missing your shout. I've got to help you right here. Jesus heard about the injustice and declared, it's my turn. You recognize the fierce urgency of now in Jesus saying, it's my turn. And I guess that's what I've come by to say. We must all recognize the fierce urgency of now, to use the language of Dr. King. One poet said, I have only just a minute, 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, I can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Yeah, it's our turn to step up and make this world a better place. It's our turn because we heard about the injustice. And we've got to do something about it. What does that look like? I'm almost done. But this gets good to me. When I go with you in the text, it says that injustice somewhere ought challenge us to stand up for justice everywhere. I said something. Y'all missed it. Let me do it one more time. When you hear about injustice anywhere, you've got to stand up for justice everywhere. I'm still not coming through. I love it because the Bible says Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been thrown in prison, and that's when he began his ministry. Is that not what people of faith and goodwill have always done? And that is, whenever we have heard of injustice, that's when we have stood for justice and made the world a better place. Y'all still didn't shout. I gotta help you right quick. But you do recognize that somehow it's been injustice that has birthed movements for justice in this nation, especially. That's our history. A nation that found itself colonized by Great Britain, and as a consequence they heard about the injustice of taxation without representation. And there in Boston Harbor we had the Boston Tea Party because they heard of injustice and began a movement for justice that gave birth to the American promise called the United States of America. Y'all still didn't shout. I gotta give it to you some more. When we heard that there was a nation that was existing, half slave and half free, there were those like Sojourner Truth and Harriet Beecher Stowe, William Lloyd Garrison, as well as Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. They heard about the injustice and fought for liberty and justice for all. Y'all still didn't get that. Under Jim and Jane Crow segregation, there were those who heard about the lynching of black bodies, and as a consequence we had the rise of Ida B. Wells Barnett and others who formed the NAACP because they heard about the injustice and rose up to fight for justice. Here's your shout right here, and that is, whenever there has been a murder that has been unjust, there has been a movement that produced justice. Y'all didn't get that. Our hearts have been broken as a community across this nation, as black bodies have been murdered, and it's downright unfair that now Oscar Grant and Trayvon Martin and so many others find themselves, instead of in college, they are in cemeteries. It's unjust, but I serve a God that sits high and looks low, and God is able to transform an unjust murder into a movement for justice. An unjust murder, y'all didn't shout, I gotta give it to you. Let me give it to you like this. It was an unjust murder in 1955, 60 years ago, when a young boy named Emmett Till went down to Mississippi from Chicago. He was lynched there in Mississippi, and when his mother received the bloated, broken body of Emmett Till, the undertaker said, "Do you want a closed casket funeral?" She said, "Oh no, I want to expose the hypocrisy in America's practice of democracy." And she opened up that casket for the nation to see. And Rosa Parks, when she saw the courage of Mama Till, made up her mind she could take it no more. And on December 1st, 1955, inspired by the courage of Mama Till, Rosa Parks took that stand and refused to give up her seat. Here comes your shout right here. You see, Emmett Till was murdered, and Rosa Parks started a movement. Y'all still didn't get that. I gotta keep this thing going. You do recall the year is what, 1963, and Medgar Evers is murdered in the driveway of his home in Jackson, Mississippi. The year is 1963, and 4 girls are studying Sunday school. On September 15th of that same year in Birmingham, Alabama, a bomb goes off and they lose their lives. The year is 1963, and John Kennedy, a recent convert to the civil rights struggle, is killed there in Dallas, Texas. Those are senseless murders, but you had another president named LBJ hold his hand up and make up his mind that he's going to pass civil rights legislation, because murders in 63 produced a movement that gave birth to the civil rights bill in 1964. Y'all still didn't shout. Schroeder, Goodman, and Cheney went down to Mississippi during Freedom Summer to register black people to vote, and they lost their lives. That's a tragedy. And then Jimmy Lee Jackson is killed in Selma in February of 65. That's a tragedy. But they marched from Selma to Montgomery, and we had the passage of the voting rights bill. Why? Because what was a bad murder became a brilliant movement. I got one more for you since y'all not getting this, and that is this other murder that was unjust took place on a hill called Calvary. I'm sorry I got to preach right now, but Jesus was lynched on Calvary. He died that Friday, but he got up on Sunday morning. And I see some folk in here who are part of the Jesus movement, because an unjust murder can become a movement for justice. Trayvon Martin and Jordan Davis and others did not die in vain, but we produce policy that brings about positive change in this nation. I'm almost done. But the other piece that this text says, here's your shout right here. When life goes dark, that's when you bring your own light and usher in a brand new day. I like that right there. When life goes dark, you got to bring in your own light. We used to sing when I was growing up in the old school church a song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine everywhere I go. I'm going to let it shine." And that's our challenge, to bring our own light. The late great Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor, in his autobiography, testifies, this is going to shout you right here, that growing up in Virginia, there was a plan that blew his mind. The plan is called the Cereus Plan. C-E-R-E-U-S. Here comes your shout right here. The Cereus Plan blew his mind because it ignored the laws of photosynthesis. In that the cereus plant, unlike the sunflower, which only blossoms when the sun is up, the cereus plant waits until it gets dark. And once it gets dark, right, that's when the cereus plant begins to blossom. As soon as darkness sets in, that's when the cereus plant shows off its stuff. Y'all didn't get that. I guess I got to give you another illustration. There's a bird called the nightingale. The nightingale sings its best music when it gets dark. The nightingale says, it may be dark right now, but I'm going to bring my light to this dark planet, and I'm going to sing in the midst of this darkness. God deliver us from canary religion, because if you want to shut up the canary, just put something over the cage, and the canary refuses to sing because it does not sing in the darkness. But when you got a nightingale spirit, you make up your mind. It may be dark, but that's when my song is most needed. And so in the midst of a darkness that has a nation or a world, and in our world there are 1 billion people who are living on less than $1.25 a day, we need somebody to sing. We have a world where the have-gots are getting more and the have-nots are getting less. Somebody needs to sing. We have a world, my brothers and sisters, where in school the have-gots get more resources and the have-nots get fewer resources, and they have to pass the same test in order to move forward in this life. Somebody's got to sing, and when somebody sings, that means we bring our own light to a dark world, and we usher in a brand new day. But here it is, and I'm done, because I love what happens here. It's your turn, it's my turn to step up and make this world a better place. It's your turn, it's my turn to bring the dream into reality. It's your turn, it's my turn. I gotta give it to you like this. I saw this and it blew my mind. I'm in Dallas. I live in Dallas, and we got a football team in Dallas. No, the football team had a season we did not see coming. Blew our minds. We never thought that we would make the playoffs this year. We made the playoffs because we had this year an offense that was just off the chain. I mean, they were off the chain. Romo throwing the ball to one Dez Bryant. And watch this. This shouted me because Dez Bryant, they were talking about him before the game they played against, who was it, Detroit, and before the game they played against the Green Bay Packers. And this is what was said about Dez Bryant. It said that Dez Bryant, once he catches the ball, he's always looking to make more yards. He's always looking. Once Romo throws him the ball, Dez Bryant is known, here's your shout right here, for yards after catch. Yards after catch. Yards after catch. Yards after catch says that Romo had done his part by throwing the ball to him and putting it where Dez could catch it. But Dez had made up his mind that once he caught the ball, it was his responsibility not to go down, but to keep on moving forward. Well, I got to make it plain because y'all not get this, but you do recognize Romo as the quarterback had done his part. He had released the ball. Dez had 2 responsibilities: catch it and then make the most out of it. Here we are gathered in St. Petersburg, and I hope y'all recognize that in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. went back to pass, and he passed us the ball of his dream. He passed us the ball as he declared, "I've been to the mountaintop." Our responsibility is to catch the ball, and now that we caught the ball, what are we going to do with that ball? What are we going to do with the ball? What are we going to do with the ball? Let's make this world a better place. What are we going to do with the ball? Let's not allow the movie Selma to produce another kumbaya moment, which is simply empty emotion. But instead, let's recognize that Selma and its genius produced lasting public policy that changed America and opened up the voting booth for everyone, regardless of their background. It's more than just feeling emotional and watching the movie. You've got to get up off of your blessed assurance and say, I'm going to make